Welcome to another episode of Decoding Chemical Engineering. Today we are here with Mr. Juproop Singh, who is a chemical engineering in the making and also the owner of the ChemEngWeekly YouTube channel. Thank you so very much, Juproop, for being here with us today, and welcome to the interview.
Thank you.
Before we begin, can you kindly tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Juproop Singh and I run Chemical Engineering Weekly, which is a YouTube channel focused purely on everything chemical engineering. So we cover everything from university admissions to careers and prospects and everything in between. And about myself personally, as you've so kindly mentioned, I am a chemical engineer in the making. So I'm an undergraduate student, and I'm currently studying at Imperial College London. And yeah, I'm really excited to give this interview.
Great. And thank you so very much once again for being here with us today. We are very happy to have you here, and we have lots of questions to ask you, of course, about chemical engineering and about your YouTube channel and about what you have to say about the degree in general.
The pleasure is all mine.
Great. Then let's get the ball rolling. So we'll begin up by asking about what brought a young man like you into the world of chemical engineering.
Very good question. So, I have many reasons for choosing chemical engineering in the first place. I recently did a video on it called My Journey to Chemical and Process Engineering on my channel. And I'd say one of the things was it was interesting how things were mass produced, because ever since I was young, I always used to think, how do they take something from a laboratory and roll it out worldwide? Like, who does the in-between bit? Like, obviously scientists do the discovery, but who does the mass production side of things? And that was kind of what introduced me to chemical engineering in the first place. And after that, I'd say the other thing that brought me to chemical engineering is the fact that chemical engineers, they are universal engineers in that they can do so much with their degree. That's just so interesting to me, because how can you conceptually fathom that somebody can be working in water treatment and also working on rocket fuel at the same time? It's insane. So that's definitely why chemical engineering.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you so very much. And that is a very interesting way to look at chemical engineering. But it's really nice that your curiosity brought you into the interesting world of chemical engineering. So thank you for sharing that. You are currently pursuing your degree in chemical engineering. Just like you said in the beginning, you are, of course, the one in the making. But in chemical engineering, just like you mentioned right now, that it can be a very volatile degree in itself. You have so many options, so many wide range of topics that you have to study. And many people still do not know exactly what chemical engineering is. The difficulty being, of course, that it can be defined in so many ways. In your experience, how would you simply define chemical engineering to someone that is just starting off or doesn't know anything about it?
That's a good question. I would say, in my experience, chemical engineering is all about taking raw materials and refining them to be viable assets and services that you can provide to the world. And the reason, like, I've seen a couple of definitions, but this is the definition I like closest, because you're taking something raw, whether that's like feedstocks for like plastics or something, but it doesn't have to be just plastics, because you've got like raw water, which already exists in the environment, and you're refining it. So with the plastics example, you're refining it to make sheet plastics and rocket exoskeletons and all that sort of stuff. But you're also refining water to make it widely supplied to the world. And the reason I included services is because chemical engineers aren't just about making a product and there you go. They're also about working in other fields like consultancy and providing that service to people to fix their problems, because chemical engineering is fundamentally about solving the world's problems by taking something from a small idea to a viable solution.
Mm-hmm. That is very, very nicely described, Juproop. And thank you very much for putting it very briefly and to the point so people can really understand what it actually is. And now we're going to talk about the program you're enrolled in, because you are currently doing your master program, correct?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about the program that you're enrolled in right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So the program I'm in right now is an integrated master's in engineering, and it's 4 years long. So you learn chemical engineering more generally with principles in the first 2 years, including things like design projects and laboratory work. And then you specialize in your third and fourth. and your degree title changes. So right now, I'm just generally enrolled in chemical engineering, Masters of Engineering. But depending on what modules I take in my third and fourth years, I could come out with, say, for example, a chemical engineering with pharmaceutical engineering degree or a chemical engineering with nuclear engineering degree. So yeah, you can graduate after 3 years of study, but ideally it's more valid to stay after, do the whole 4 years of integrated masters, because you come out upskilled to a higher level and you're more useful in industry that way.
Great, thank you. And just so to be clear, so you don't really get a bachelor's degree along the lines, right? You only directly get a master's degree after 4 years.
That is correct. Yes, you don't really get a bachelor's.
Great. But now normally, a lot of people, they don't go down that route. Especially if someone is watching from a different country, they have that very stereotypical a bachelor degree and then a master degree. But you chose not to walk that path and choose this integrated program. Is there a specific reason that you chose this program and not the old-fashioned bachelor and then a master?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the UK, all the top 10 universities for chemical engineering, they all offer a 4-year integrated master's as the first choice, and with good reason. Because the way the industry is structured in the UK is for you to go into a higher level role fresh off graduation, they would like you to have a master's. So that's why I went into this role. I'd say there's definitely some advantages and disadvantages. One of the advantages is obviously it's 4 years of continuous study, and that's it, you have your master's. So compared to the other group you were talking about, you do a bachelor's, maybe go into industry, and then do an extra year or 18 months on top. But a disadvantage is the way the program is structured is you're almost discouraged from doing like a year in industry, because then that would make your years of study 5 years, which is a very lengthy period of time to study. So yeah, that's the reason I chose it.
Great. Well, thank you so very much for sharing that. Could you briefly tell us a little bit about the workload that you have in the program?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start off by saying I have nothing but praise for Imperial. The way they've treated me just these past couple of years has been absolutely amazing. I think their dedication to their students is very good, and they really provide you with all the resources. So the workload, it differs from years. So the first year is the lightest on workload. I would say some weeks you could be working up to 40 hours a week, but other weeks you could be as low as 32. So it really depends on what season it is, whether it's opening season or exam season. And one of the main key points about Imperial's system is they provide a lot of support, as I said. So we have weekly tutorials within the different modules where you have PhD students who come and tutor you. And you also have access to office hours and good support with your personal tutorials. So it's not just all about work. There is a lot of balance, and your mental health is well catered for as well.
Amazing. And it's always good to have this support system in place, especially when you are enrolled in a complex degree as chemical engineering.
Absolutely.
But then if I was to ask, how would you describe a very normal week at the university? Like, is it divided up on assignments, labs, and are you getting 8 hours of sleep?
That is a very good question. I would say a normal week is quite linear in that we would have, as I said, around 40 hours of work. So we have around 15 hours of lectures, give or take, usually split up into 3 hours of lectures a day over 5 days. Obviously, some days it might be you have a 3-hour lecture and a 1-hour lecture the next day. So it's roughly around 15 hours a week of lectures. In terms of labs, they always come in blocks of 3 hours. So we have to do around 6 hours every fortnight. So 6 hours of lab work every fortnight, but that's only like structured. Everything else on top of that, so the work you do outside, that depends on how much you want to put in. 8 hours of sleep, I'll be honest. Sometimes it's not always possible, but it comes down to how much you are willing to give up to get the grade you want. So sometimes you have to put a stop to say, no, it's 11 o'clock, I have to go to sleep, 8 hours, I need to be there tomorrow. Or other days you pull all-nighters because you've got assignments due. In terms of assignments, we do have a couple of those each term. So I would say we have at least 3 assignments each term. And the term is 10 weeks. So it's roughly around 3 weeks per assignment. So yeah, good split. And if you want to, I'd say if you want to secure a good grade, so a 2.1, or I think in GPA, that's around 3.4, you'd have to do around 6 to 8 hours of work each day, 7 days a week. So yeah.
Yep. Great. Thank you very much for sharing that. Uh, but now you are, of course, currently studying chemical engineering. And I don't know if it has ever happened with you, but if you tell someone that you are a chemical engineer, they connect it directly with you being a chemist. They might even throw in a chemical question right after you, like, oh yeah, do you know how many bonds there are in that specific chemical? Uh, do you feel that there is some sort of connection between chemical engineering and chemistry?
Yeah, absolutely. So interestingly enough, I put out a tweet a couple of weeks ago saying that perhaps we should rename chemical engineering to mechanical engineering because it's closer to mechanical engineering than it is to chemistry. But to back up the answer to the question, I'd say there definitely is a link, but
Mhm.
chemistry only makes up to around about 20% of the whole of chemical engineering because as you said, people automatically assume, oh, chemical engineering chemist, you must be
Mhm.
doing the same thing. It's only
Mhm.
chemical engineers aren't really concerned about the science behind how everything works. They're only concerned about the science that makes them a valid product that they can scale up. So I would say it's about 20% chemistry, but
Mhm.
it's more physics and maths and probably about 5% biology. So there definitely is a connection, as I said, but
Mhm.
it's about a fifth.
Great. Well, thank you very much for sharing that. But now going back to chemical engineering, because now you said there are so many topics that you are looking at. You're looking at physics, math, biology, chemistry, then you have your engineering, then you have labs. Could you briefly describe like what sort of topics you have to deal with in chemical engineering and how the curriculum is set up in the entire program?
Yeah, of course. So in the first 2 years, as I said, you deal with your kind of bread and butter chemical engineering concepts before specializing in your third and fourth. So I would say in the first 2 years, you look at your process analysis, which is you essentially take a process. It could be anything from transporting oranges from a farm to a juice bottle, or something more complex like a heat exchanger for a carbon capture plant. And you simplify it down into a diagram and you understand how everything flows and where things go to and from and the reactions that occur in between. So process analysis, definitely. Another huge one is thermodynamics. So everyone loves thermodynamics because it's essentially chemical engineering. It is the bread and butter chemical engineering module. So that's all about that's all about how things behave under different temperature, volumes, and pressures, and how you can manipulate systems to get certain environments out of them and how things can be optimized better. So that's what thermodynamics is about. You also have your fluid mechanics. So that's all about how things flow. And if you've been watching my chemical engineering alphabet, I have a very big onus on fluid mechanics because it's a very term heavy module.
Mhm.
On top of that, you have separation processes. So this is your more kind of traditional chemical engineering. Like when you think of chemical engineering, you think, okay, oil and gas columns. That's what separation processes is. It's how things work in
Mhm.
separations and different volatilities and all that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
Maths is a very big part, of course, because maths is, well, it's an engineering discipline, so you'd expect a lot of maths. You also have your process design and control and your reaction engineering. So this is slightly more physics heavy. And you focus on why reactions occur the way they do and how you can best manipulate these reactions to get desired products at the end of them. And on top of that, I would say there is labs and design projects. So this is where you work with other members of other chemical engineering students to get a common goal, whether that's to carry out an experiment or to provide a consultancy brief, like in a heat exchanger problem, for example. So yeah, those are
Mhm.
the main modules in the chemical engineering degree.
Great. And thank you so very much for briefly and really in detail explaining all the different topics. Uh, so before going into the chemical engineering school, what are the academic skills that students should be aware of right when they are getting out of high school?
I think that's a great question because there's obviously many answers that I could give, but I'm going to stick to the top two that I would like to focus on. So the first one I would say is good team working skills. And this is
Mhm.
an academic soft skill because to work as a good chemical engineering student, you need to learn how to teamwork. There's no two ways about it. You will always be working with your fellow chemical engineers, whether that's on an assignment or on a problem sheet or in labs. So team working skills is definitely a massive one. Um, and add to that, I would say time management,
Mhm.
because if you have good time management, you can you can navigate university life and chemical engineering specifically better because chemical engineering won't be okay. You have one assignment a week and that's it. There's about 50 different things going on. You've got a product design module due tomorrow. You've got an assignment due next week. You've got labs that's due tonight. So managing your time, knowing when you're doing stuff, that's very important. So before starting chemical engineering, if you've got good time management and good team working skills, it's definitely the right degree for you.
Great. Well, thank you so very much for sharing that, Juproop. Then the final question I'll ask about your education is that, you mentioned all the chemical engineering hard topics, and those are, of course, given topics that are very common, something that every engineer needs to know. Then, of course, you have your basic labs, and then you have your basic science topics. But, in the recent times, the world has moved towards a very different phase of chemical engineering as well. For example, data science, programming, and all those other aspects that we need to be clear up. Do you feel that your university puts enough focus on these additional topics such as programming, Python, data analytics, and so on?
Yeah, definitely. Good question. I would say that Imperial is very, very focused on the cutting edge technology, because one of the main modules we have in our first year is we actually have a MATLAB, entire module dedicated to MATLAB, and we do that over the first term and second term. So in that we learn basics of MATLAB programming, and we complete the on-ramp course, which is the introductory course. But by the end of second term, or midway through second term, we have a mini project due, whereby we have to use all the skills we've picked up to answer a real chemical engineering problem. So if I go back to an early example, the heat exchanger design. So we have to use MATLAB code to take data from a heat exchanger plant that's giving out data, and work out whether it's economically viable and whether the separation process is running at the correct efficiency as it should be. So that's quite a big focus on non-hard sciences. But we also have other things that we focus on. So we learn Aspen. Aspen's a massive, very good software that we use in chemical engineering. And we also have a couple of other compulsory technology modules. So I think we do Lean Six Sigma, which is offered to us. And I'd say on that respect, Imperial was very good in that they give us the opportunity to study things other than hard sciences.
Well, that's actually very impressive that your university has put aside a great deal of focus on these additional aspects of chemical engineering. Because I can tell you, a lot of people that I've spoken to around the world, they don't really put that much focus on these topics, which is quite sad. So that's great. So you are in very good hands when it comes to very additional aspects. So that's great. And thank you very much for sharing that. But now let's move into something more interesting and something that I have been looking forward to talk to you about, and that is your YouTube channel. For the people who are watching, and just like I mentioned in the very beginning, that Juproop is not only enrolled in his master program, but at the same time, he also is running a very effective and a very interesting YouTube channel called Chemical Engineering Weekly. Can you tell us a little bit about your YouTube channel?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you for the praise. It means a lot, honestly. So I'd say ChemEngWeekly, it's a channel dedicated to exploring everything about chemical engineering. So the things I focus on cover loads of things. So we focus on things from university admissions to careers and everything in between. So recently I put out videos about how to get into Cambridge for chemical engineering, the processes explained for that. But also, in just the past month, we talked about how chemical engineering is portrayed in the media and how Marvel films are portraying chemical engineering. So it is essentially everything chemical engineering. So I thought, if chemical engineering is considered universal engineering, then let's make a channel that's literally universal about universal engineering. The reason that I started Chemical Engineering Weekly in the first place was because as a university applicant myself, there wasn't a lot of information or support about how to get into university. So that's where it really stemmed from, because I thought, okay, I have all the necessary tools now to help people get into university. How's the best way to make use of these? How's the best way to give out this information? I thought, yeah, let's do a YouTube channel. So that's where it started from. And yeah, I'm hoping to expand into other topics moving forward. So obviously this collaboration is a great way to start. And I think, yeah, so that's about Chemical Engineering Weekly, essentially.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for sharing that. And as a viewer, I must say that your videos truly mean a lot, because just like you said, there isn't really that much information that you can find as a high school student applying for universities. So your videos are sent down from heaven for a lot of people.
Thank you.
To really get that information out there. But now you have mentioned few of the contents that you are making on YouTube. Could you also tell us like what exactly, like a list of the content that you are making apart from these videos like applying for university? Other than that, are there any other things about chemical engineering that you are sharing through your channel?
Yeah, sure. So through the channel itself, I have been making everything from admissions to careers, as I said. So right now, the main focus is university admissions because career university admission season runs from around September time to just around January. So that's what the main focus is now. But moving forward, I definitely will be focusing on university modules because I think if we can create more discussion around what we're studying, we will appreciate why we are studying it. So that's something that moving forward I would like to do. Other things that we'll look into is more about careers. So I did one in the past where we talked about non-standard careers for chemical engineers, but we'll also be looking at content that my demographics. So my demographics are around 16 to 25. Anything that would interest them about chemical engineering. What does the public think about chemical engineering? What does a typical life in the day of a chemical engineer look like? How does the chemical engineer help you in a day? These are sort of things that I will be focusing on. So yeah, that's the YouTube channel side of things.
Great, wonderful, and and I bet a lot of people are looking forward to your future content as well. So that's wonderful. But just out of curiosity, how do you find all this information about the universities, about the application process? If you could share your thought, your like your process, if you could.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing I've maintained throughout all my videos is I do not just pull out this data out of thin air because I'm by no means an expert. Everything that I have got has been through research, so there's quite a lot of information already out on the internet about chemical engineering and applications. The only problem is, and this is the problem I faced, it's very well hidden. So there'll be hidden, there'll be a single line in a forum somewhere, and you'll be like, oh, that's interesting, but you won't be able to find it because you've got so much sifting to do. So a lot of my information comes from trusted university sites, forums, but also I'm slowly developing a connection of chemical engineering students at these universities. So I've obviously got my peers at Imperial College. They help me a lot with their tips and tricks from when they applied. But I know people who go to the University of Manchester, for example, the University of Nottingham, the University of Cambridge. And yeah, they provide a lot of helpful resources. And they're not just peers my age. So I have a couple of peers who are PhD students at, for example, University of Manchester. I know them. I know a couple of third years at the University of Manchester. And these are the people that really help with the information because they can get it directly from the source and they can provide the information they've got from talking to their own lecturers and professors and admissions tutors, what makes a successful application. So yeah.
Amazing. I mean, that's really wonderful and really impressive that you are putting all these hours into creating something like this. But then I would imagine that you are quite busy. I mean, of course, you have your master degree on the side, and then you are doing all this research. And then the one thing is to do research, and then to make the videos, and then to publish the videos. How do you manage everything while at the same time being on top of your university?
I would say that one of the key things about the Chemical Engineering Weekly side of things is time management. Going back to what I talked about earlier, because there's a lot of planning that goes into it. So some of the videos I might be releasing this week, you might think, oh, he's just filmed them this week, but I've already had them filmed for a couple of months, for example. So it's a lot about pushing in hard during the holiday season, putting a lot of work in then, and then slowly feeding it out when the time is right. So, for example, on my Instagram page, I have a reel series called the Chemical Engineering Alphabet, and I've actually got around 6 to 8 ready to go right now. So if I press go, they'll all just go onto my Instagram page. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to slowly roll them out. So when the time is right, so for example, every once a week on a Wednesday, they might come out the next iteration, and that way it will show that I am working on it. But the truth of the matter is, I've already worked on it, and it's just coming out later. So I think you'll be well aware of this yourself, running such a successful program with the ChemEnggLife mentorship program. Planning is very important. So yeah, that's how it works.
Yeah, fully agreed. And time management, I mean, that is a skill that can make wonders happen. So, but thank you very much for sharing the process. But now, because now we are talking about your YouTube channel, but then at the same time, you're also running and your Instagram channel for your channel and an Instagram account on the side. Could you briefly tell us that what is the sort of content that you publish on Instagram?
Yeah, absolutely. So my Instagram channel focuses more on the wider demographic of chemical engineers. So if ChemEngWeekly on YouTube is from 16 to 25-year-olds, Chemical Engineering Weekly on Instagram is from about 60 to retirees. So it covers everyone. So the current series that I'm working on right now is called the Chemical Engineering Alphabet, and that focuses on a technical term. So, for example, for A, we had absorption, and it's just a quick 30-second reel. So if somebody's new to chemical engineering, they'll look at that and be like, oh, so this is what absorption is. Whereas somebody who's a seasoned professional, they can go back and say, ah, yes, this reminds me, this is what absorption is. So that's what the content on the Instagram page is. It's much more universal in that respect. So yeah, I'd say I really enjoy making that because it's not the same as long form content, but you still have an effective reach and you can still have an impact with that as well. So
amazing. That's really impressive. And also, you're learning chemical engineering in a fun way. Like you said, you make those 30-second reels, so it's entertaining, but at the same time, you're getting something out of the Instagram account. So that's very nice. And for all the people that are watching, if you are about to apply for university or you even are a chemical engineer, then do go and visit Chemical Engineering Weekly on YouTube and on Instagram. I mean, his account is a lifesaver for the chemical engineers around the globe. And thank you very much for putting all this effort into it, Juproop.
No, thank you. Thank you for the praise. It means a lot.
So now let's talk about the engineering aspects in the UK for chemical engineers. It goes without saying, but the UK is, of course, a dream workplace for many people around the globe. Also because there is no language barrier and a lot of people can easily go and work there. And there's a home to so many biggest industries in the world. Now that you live there, do you feel that UK is a good place for chemical engineers?
That's a good question. I think definitely it's a really good country for chemical engineering, but not for every discipline, because not every discipline has enough space in the UK, because the UK isn't that big, to put it quite bluntly. So I'd say for specific industries, there is quite a lot of demand. So especially moving forward, like renewable energy and hydrogen, there's a lot of that. But for some other industries like oil and gas, not so much. But I definitely say for chemical engineering, there always has been a demand in the UK. And I think, touch wood, hopefully there will be a demand moving forward too.
Okay, amazing, great. But then let's talk about the specific industries in the UK. Just like you mentioned yourself, oil and gas is not very big in England. But what industries would you then say that are very good right now, but also industries that you feel are growing slowly in the UK for chemical engineers?
Yep, absolutely. So I'd say right now, probably there is a little bit of oil and gas. It's more Scotland and above, because geographically, that's where the most oil and gas is. Talking about more recently, there has been the UK government actually lifted the shale fracking ban. So there will be more oil and gas onshore demand moving forward. It won't be as high, but there will be. But in terms of good industries to be right now in the UK, I'd definitely say textiles and renewable energy. Those are two really big ones. There's many wind farms located off the UK. There's actually one in Kent that I visited, and I'll be hoping to cover in a video soon. So that's quite interesting. We also have a very good textile industry. So textiles in the Midlands and in the north of the UK, they're very, very good and booming. And we also have good pharmaceutical industries. So as you might know, Pfizer has one of its main plants in the UK, and they're opening another one soon, if they have not already opened it, to the best of my knowledge. And yeah, so that's a very good industry as well. But there is a good breadth of industries in the UK. To answer the second part of your question, in terms of industries that are slowly growing within the UK, hydrogen and renewable energy, as I said, because there's obviously a very big push to ensure we hit the climate change goals that everyone has agreed to. So that's definitely something that's moving forward. And also kind of electrochemistry, if that makes sense. So that's also a very big growing field within the UK.
Okay, great, amazing. And thank you. And you're very right, because this is a growing trend, that renewability and especially electrochemistry, those electric cells, they are making a great development within chemical engineering. And more chemical engineers are going towards that area. So that's great that there are opportunities for that in the UK. That's amazing. Thank you. But because now all these industries that you mentioned, they are all, of course, core chemical engineering jobs or industries. You have process engineer, all those engineering roles. Do you feel that UK is also a good place for a chemical engineer if they're not looking for a core position, but maybe a non-core engineering position?
Yeah, absolutely. So I
Mhm.
recently read a statistic that said in the UK, 70% of jobs of a high level don't require any specific degree, just a degree. So to go off the back of that, I'd say, yeah, definitely. There always has been a demand for chemical engineering students and graduates in the UK, and there always will be, because the skill set that a chemical engineer possesses after graduating is so diverse. Like they can work in good teams, they can work to tight deadlines, they can plan, they can execute. That skill set is just so rich. You can apply it anywhere. So to give examples of where chemical engineers work that I'm personally aware of, consultancy is a big one. Banking and finance is a very big one. But also things like teaching. So one of my former teacher's sons is a chemical engineer working as a high school professor in chemistry. So there definitely has been a demand. So I think, yeah, definitely. Even if you don't want to go into core chemical engineering areas, there is always going to be demand for your degree in the UK.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for sharing. Moving on, let's talk about, let's say I could give you a time machine and you could go back in time, anytime, anywhere in the past, and you can meet your old self. What would you tell yourself, something that you know now, but you wish someone had told you back then?
Oh, okay. That's a very good question.
Mhm.
Good question. Okay, so if I could get a time machine and go back in time to tell my old self something, I would tell myself that chemical engineering is the right degree for me, and I should stop stressing about it first of all. But the second thing, is, I would tell myself, um, be more open to taking on research projects, because I think in the past I was always very hesitant to take on research projects because I thought, oh, a research project, there's a lot that could go wrong. So that's something I would tell myself going back in time. But I'll also tell myself, um, for chemical engineering more specifically, don't be afraid to look at chemical engineering as a general engineering principle. Because going back to what we were talking about earlier, even chemical engineering to me and to most people, the first time they hear it is, oh, it's chemistry, but it's not quite chemistry. It's an engineering principle. So I think maybe in the past, I passed up opportunities to appreciate engineering more generally because I was so focused on chemical engineering. And if I could go back and tell myself, I definitely would have appreciated things like engineering workshops or structural engineering work experience, for instance. So I think, yeah, that's something I would definitely do.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you. But then let's talk about the future generation of chemical engineers. Because now you of course have been in this line for a very long time, and given your YouTube channel, you have gained a very good expertise or very good know-how of chemical engineering as well. What would you suggest for other chemical engineers who are about to graduate or are maybe in the same time as you are? What would you suggest? What is that one skill do you think they should be focusing on?
So I would say, first of all, thank you for the praise. I'm not quite that experienced. I've only got just about 2 years under my belt. So any advice I would give here is advice that I've previously gotten. So as I explained before, my network with the older years and PhD students, and they've always told me, try to upskill yourself at every given opportunity, because there is a lot that your university can offer to you as a chemical engineering graduate or even as an undergrad that will help you in your journey to become a chemical engineer. And by this, I don't just mean, oh, we all need to go learn MATLAB, for example. There's a lot of other things. So get involved with societies, take on responsibilities for planning events, get to network with your peers and understand why they chose chemical engineering and what they can help you with. So I definitely say that's something that I would advise future graduates. If you can, take the time out to do that research project, take the time out to learn how to use Excel properly, or how to do Lean Six Sigma, or how to use Python, and maybe do a data science module, because that really will help you in your degree. Because when you go to that degree and when you finish your degree and you go to your employer and tell them, hey, I know how to use Excel. Brilliant, you'll stand out. So definitely upskilling is a massive thing that I would tell, because that's what all the previous graduates have told me.
Great. Well, thank you very much for sharing that valuable tip. And I fully agree with what you just said, that that is a very good tip, that learning chemical engineering is not the entire deal. You really need to have all the other things that go along with it. And many times these things are not very visible, or so you really have to make that move about not just focusing on solving differential equations, but being friends with other people, having that connection, having that university experience is also equally important. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Juproop. And this pretty much concludes all the questions we actually had for you for the interview. And it goes without saying, thank you so very much for the detailed insights and all your answers. Is there something you would like to add?
Well, first thing I'd like to add is thank you so much for taking the time out, contacting me, and considering myself able to give this interview. I'm deeply honored to have spent this time talking to you about chemical engineering, because every time I talk about chemical engineering, you can probably see it from my face, I absolutely love it. Anything I would add? Yeah, definitely one thing I would add is make sure you subscribe to ChemEnggLife. It's an absolutely amazing platform, a great mentorship platform as well. So keep your eye out on that for Instagram. And yeah, just make sure you keep working hard and you will become good chemical engineers, I'm sure.
Great. Thank you so much, Juproop. Thank you very much. And thank you for the great words. Thank you. And you know, it was a pleasure to reach out to you, and it's always been a pleasure to talk to you about chemical engineering. And I can really see on your face as well that you are very passionate about the topic, which makes it even more great to talk to you about these things. So, and thank you very much for being here with us here again, and for sharing everything that you have about chemical engineering. So, thank you.
Thank you for listening. And if you have not done so already, remember to become a free member at Chemical Engineering Life. And do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and stay tuned for more upcoming podcasts with chemical engineers. Thank you, and have a great day.